And a lot of the time with back pain, quite often it does actually come back to breath. I know a lot of people, when they say that, roll their eyes. We can't live without breath, right? More than a few seconds. So we don't think about it and the importance of it. With every inhale, we're supposed to be breathing in nutrients to our cells. And with every exhale, we're supposed to be breathing out that toxicity and that waste. Now, if that breath is shallow and short because we're under stress, then we're not actually getting that full inhale and that full exhale.
Raffaella, welcome to the show.
Hi, Emily. Nice to be here.
So, first question, what does it actually mean to suffer from chronic pain?
So, chronic pain is quite complex and it can mean that it comes with a variety of symptoms, but it's talking about chronic being the time that you've been in pain. So, they say about anything longer than 3 months or anything longer than the body's initial response that it should take to heal from maybe an acute injury or something that's happened. If it's taken longer to heal, then it becomes chronic as opposed to acute, which is a direct response to a physical injury. Yeah.
So, then the link in between, say, an injury and chronic pain, are they kind of one and the same then? It's based on the time length rather than the type of injury? Or how can people
Yeah.
identify it in their life? Because I think when we say chronic pain, suddenly people think, okay, I'm really old now and I have to use a walking stick to go everywhere. Or they kind of go to the really dramatic examples of it. But
Yeah.
as we said before we even started recording, it's something that a lot of people actually deal with.
Mm.
Athletes deal with. People who sit at a desk a lot of the time deal with. There's a pain in your back that you have to
Mm.
watch. Is that counting as chronic pain? Like, can we break it down so people can understand it?
It's quite often happening at such a subconscious level, and a lot of, my clients, even that I work with, they just say, "Oh, I'm just getting old," and it's like this natural thing that happens, and it kind of is true because the longer you've been alive, the more time you've had on this planet for stuff to happen, and if as that accumulates, then that can, create this kind of density in the fascia system. I talk a lot about fascia in relation to pain because it's very much linked. When you've been in pain for a long time, then that starts to affect your nervous system. And then that also your brain signals and how your brain processes pain get kind of stuck on this neural pathway. And it's then become this neural habit that you're not even aware of that's now having this physical impact on your body. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really crazy. So, what was that word you said? Fascia? Fascia? Is that
Fascia,
right? Help us
yes,
just
yes.
define that. What is fascia for people who don't
Oh,
know?
I love that you asked that because this is, from my experience and working with people, the missing link to health. Our fascia systems, our bodies have been designed with this very complex system called fascia, and it's literally a connective tissue. If you think of it like a web, and it holds our whole structure in place. So without it, our cells would just melt into a puddle. Like it literally connects to our bones and it holds everything. It envelops cells, it envelops your organs, it envelops your muscles, your ligaments, your tendons. Every single system is enveloped by fascia. It holds us together. It also has a direct link in communication. It talks to our nervous system. So, our central nervous system, which is there to process sensory information. Anything that we encounter in life, be it physical or emotional, our nervous system senses that and then it talks to our fascia system and our fascia reacts to that. So, quite often people think their muscles are tight or they've got a bad back and it's because their QL muscle is tight. Well, often it's not the muscle that's tight, it's the fascia that's wrapped around the muscle that is so restricted and dense because of, say, the injury or the stress that you've been through. And we try and stretch the muscles to relieve it, but that relief is only temporary because we haven't addressed the fascia. Yeah, I could talk a lot about that.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So, okay, hypothetically, someone has a bad back. They've identified this. They've gone, okay, it's been for a while. Maybe
Mm,
they wouldn't say it's chronic pain because we wouldn't necessarily jump to that conclusion. However, we now know it does count under that category.
yeah.
They come to you and they say, look, this is the situation. Okay, you tell them about the fascia. What happens then? How can you actually do anything about it?
Yeah, yeah. So fascia needs needs movement and it needs oxygen. So what's happening is when the fascia is tight, it's a lack of blood flow and oxygen. So when you go and get a massage or even acupuncture, dry needling, what the therapist is doing is they're applying pressure to a part of the body to stimulate blood flow, right? And to stimulate oxygen and hydration to the cell. At cellular level, we want blood flow and oxygen to literally bring life back to an area that's been dead, say, or stagnant. And quite often we live unconscious a lot of the time. We have all sorts of habits that are maybe not so good, even postural issues like how you're positioning your body throughout the day, or mental stress, which causes the breath to become short, uh, can then affect this blood flow and oxygen to our cells. And a lot of the time with back pain, yes, it's postural. Yes, maybe you have a disc that's now bulging, but quite often it does actually come back to breath. And I know a lot of people, when they say that, roll their eyes. And I used to be one of those people because breathing is something that we do all the time. We can't live without breath, right? More than a few seconds. So we don't think about it and the importance of it, but we've been designed to have this breath. With every inhale, we're breathing in, we're supposed to be breathing in nutrients to our cells. And with every exhale, we're supposed to be breathing out that toxicity and that waste without breath. Now, if that breath is shallow and short because we're under stress, our nervous system's wound up, then we're not actually getting that full inhale and that full exhale. So, what happens is the body starts to become stagnant and there's no energy, there's no flow, and there's areas that then become really dense from a fascial perspective because the tissue, the connective tissue, doesn't have that blood flow that's kind of circulating, I guess, fluidity and movement and ease and grace in the body.
The shallow breathing is quite interesting because you
Mm,
say, we're supposed to breathe in this fresh air, and we exhale this, and you said the word toxins there, and I remember,
yeah,
you'd be at school, people, you know, you breathe in the oxygen, the teacher tells you, and you breathe out the carbon dioxide, and it's
yeah,
okay because trees are really good because they like carbon dioxide, and that's why we have trees, and it kind of makes sense in your head,
yeah,
but then you kind of forget all about that, and you kind of breathe when you have to, and you don't think about it, and as you say then, is actually a really crucial part of the human body, not just to stay alive, but actually the
yeah,
flushing out of that sort of element.
yes,
So are these
yes,
short breaths, are these a subconscious part of
yeah.
how we act? Is this a new thing? Or is it our new kind of lifestyle and what we do? Or how is this, I think, in existence, do you think? Like, do we just not realize it?
Oh, I mean, I'm such a culprit of that. I did this breathing course about 3 years ago now because I thought I wanted to help my clients learn how to breathe better, and I'd already done a bit of breathing with my studies on Pilates, and then I quickly realized that I was actually the one that needed the help because, well, if you talk for your job, for one, you have to mouth breathe. I talk all day. You're mouth breathing. So if you cannot access nasal breath, then your breath is already shallow because you're breathing through your mouth. You're not actually able to access your diaphragm in your belly if you're constantly breathing through your mouth. And a lot of people actually cannot breathe through the nose, because of physical, like maybe there's structural things going on. They have asthma, there's allergy season. Whoa, it's horrible. And it's like, well, you actually have to train that. And if you're sleeping with your mouth open, you're probably snoring, which is again, the diaphragm is not able to do its job, which is to move up and down with every breath. And if that muscle is not getting that contraction right through our breath with every deep breath we take through our belly, then it becomes stiff, right? And it becomes tight. And if your diaphragm is stiff and tight, and mine was chronically stiff and tight, like, oh my goodness, no wonder I had pain everywhere in my ribs to my back to my neck. Like the diaphragm, just so we understand, a lot of people don't, it's actually connected to the front, your sternum, and then it wraps the rib cage houses, kind of protects this powerful vital muscle, and it connects to your spine. So it's three-dimensional, and its job is to move up and down and massage our internal organs. So if it's not able to do that self-massage with every breath that we're taking, then what's going to happen to those vital organs over time? So the older you get, the more time you've had and breathing poorly in your life, then those vital organs do not have blood flow and oxygen, and therefore they start to fail, right, as we get old and everyone gets sick and there's dis-ease in the body. But it's not only that, it's when the diaphragm is not pumping how it's supposed to, then there's this fascial tension that starts to happen, and fascia is connected head to toe. You can't separate it. So everything is interconnected. That's why a lot it all I believe, comes back to the diaphragm and what is the actual state of your breath. Because if that's poor, then your fascia system is gonna, especially over time, it's gonna get tighter and tighter and tighter as this house of like it's literally the center of your body, right, where the diaphragm sits, is not functioning properly and keeping us well. Does that yeah.
So I feel like we're teetering slightly on the edge of a very popular hot topic at the moment, which would be the mouth taping at night, sleeping with
Oh, yeah.
tape over your mouth, which has kind of become now like a bit of a trend, and now people are talking
Yeah.
about it and things like that, which, I don't really know a lot of background on it. So that was interesting what you said there, and we'll delve into it a little bit more in a
Mhm.
second. But also, how does this incorporate, like, how can we actually change this system, like, that we do so subconsciously? How can we consciously help ourselves to breathe more deeply? Because as we say, often
Mm.
it's without realizing. And I
Yeah.
guess maybe that's where, we can delve into the mouse tape that you sleep with. And I'm sure you'll give a bit more information on why
Yeah.
that is firstly popular and why it can be helpful. And I know Andrew Huberman's talked a huge amount about this as well.
Yeah.
Why breathing out through your mouth actually even changes the whole shape of your face,
Your
and
face,
how,
yeah.
yeah, it's wild, which I think got a lot of people's attention because they're like, "Oh, no, wait, my face is going to look different,"
I
and
wanna
suddenly
look
that's
good.
when we
Yeah.
feel terrified. What can you give us a
Yes.
little bit of information about this whole, yeah, fighting the subconscious and also the mouth taping?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, like, being, like, self-awareness, and I think in this modern world, we're all so busy and there's so many, distractions, right? It's just so we're so easily distracted. There's so many things and external forces coming at us, seeking our attention, and we kinda neglect ourselves, and a lot of us, especially females, we give a lot, and, if you've got children as well, it's like you're just given, and if you're, in the industry, like, you're giving to your clients and you neglect actually, "Okay, what do I need?" Like, "Are my needs being met? Have I had time to pause in my day, or is my mind just constantly thinking of the next thing? Am I even taking a minute to, like, connect to my body and actually go, 'How do I feel right now?'" If you're in chronic pain, you actually don't want to do that because then you go, "Oh my gosh, I don't feel good." So we actually subconsciously, we've trained ourselves to disconnect from ourselves. And then that just keeps us in this horrible cycle of disconnection. And you cannot heal if you're disconnected because your body is producing these pain signals to try and get your attention. Pain is the body's language. And if we keep ignoring it or wishing that it wasn't there or doing things like taking medication to suppress it, or scrolling social media or watching Netflix every night before bed because we don't want to feel or be with ourselves because that's too hard, then it just keeps us in this loop, in this cycle, and then that's why it's chronic and never ending, because it's like trying to get off that hamster wheel and learn to go, okay, let's face this pain, let's not be scared of it. My body's trying to tell me something. Let's actually learn to listen and, like, what does it want to say? Usually when you give it that time and that space, oh, you let it go. You let it, sometimes it's on an exhale. Like when you fully like can just breathe and an emotion will come up, right? And you'll go, oh, like, actually, oh, can I share? I had this, I mean, and this happens a lot, but I was literally just using my hands to put pressure into my belly one day, and an emotion, a memory of an ex relationship came up, and I got teary, I got emotional. I didn't even know what I was crying about. Like it wasn't even like it was just like, huh, it came, and then I kind of got scared. I'm like, "Oh, why am I still feeling like this? Like, why is this affecting me?" And then I go, "No, no, like, just sit with this, like, let the body process this." And then within seconds, I thought of the memory again, and I had no emotional response to it. So it's like that was stored in my gut as I was putting pressure there to release it. It's fascia system is connected to our emotional state, our nervous system. It's not just a physical thing connected to our muscles that help us gain flexibility. You know, we all want that flexibility and mobility. It's a big topic right now as well.
I just think that the link there between what you said, okay, we feel pain, and why we feel pain is our body signaling to us, hold on, there's an issue here. Whether it's
Mm.
something like severe pain or like a dull pain, I guess,
Yeah.
which is maybe less urgent, but still something that will linger, and then that's also tiring in its own way. And then you kind of slightly like alluded to, and then we just, take a paracetamol or ibuprofen or whatever it is, and then we think, okay, that pain can just go away now. And then we just pass over it. And sometimes,
Mm.
we have a big work day, we've got a headache, we're probably dehydrated along with whatever it could be. We just take a paracetamol, get on with our day, and it's fine. But
Mm.
if that becomes a pattern that we're relying upon, there's a bit of a red flag there. But I think the link between our neurological situation in our heads, what we're thinking, what our
Mm.
nerves are saying to us, what is happening in our brain, whatever emotion it is as well, because the emotions then will link in so much with that.
Mm.
Plus how our body's actually feeling. Do you know, are we feeling tired? Are
Mm.
we feeling
Mm.
sore? Do we have muscle pain from the gym or because,
Mm.
we ran and hit a table with our knee and it really hurts and that's just signaling to our body? Like there's so many different levels to it, I think. And the more
Yeah.
I kind of talk about the psychology of our brain and our body and how it all links together, it just utterly
Mm.
blows my mind because there's so much we don't even know. And I think
Yeah.
so many people won't even have heard of the fascia, which you were saying earlier, which is literally how our whole body like links together and communicates with us. Do you know like a little
Yeah.
side, oh yeah, this is how it, our whole body functions. You're like, wait, what was that?
Why don't they tell us this?
It just blows my mind. How we didn't know about
Honestly.
this.
Yeah, yeah. I spent years because I had my own diagnosis of chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia when I was 17 years old, and that's a very young age to get that diagnosis. And I've spent, over a decade, my whole 20s, in and out of specialists and allied health practitioners, and they were brilliant, but I was never kind of told about the fascia system, and a lot of, the help was take these pills and this is something you're gonna have to live with. It's just in your brain. Pain is in your brain, so maybe go to therapy. And it's like, oh, okay. And so I did that, and I went to therapy, and I've delved into a lot of self development and work to try and understand how I can help myself. And you know, 15 years on, I've, through my own research and experience, I kind of break it into two parts, kind of touching on what you just said. We're in pain because of stress and trauma, be that physical. So I use the word body, like physical stress, like what you said, you've fallen over or you've gone to the gym and you've smashed your body. You're an athlete, right? And you've put yourself under physical stress that it's like at a body level. Or the stress and trauma from an emotional, I use the word soul, your mind, will, and emotions. At soul level, if there is stress, right, both affect the nervous system and bring it into that tension, fight, flight. So at soul level, if there's stress going on internally, and most of us, because of that disconnection, we're not even aware of how we really feel. We're like living our lives in this like trying to please everyone else, or just disconnected. So we're not actually even aware of like one, who we are. Like I think our generation has a crisis of identity and like who actually am I? Or not this perceived perception of who we're supposed to be. So that's like going really, really deep, right? But the thing is, stress and trauma, be it mental or physical, gets stored in our body. So our mind and our body are separate intelligences, but they talk to each other. So that's why things like talk therapy, like it's not just this heady thing that we can talk about to resolve. It is good to be aware of, but it's stored, sorry, in the body. So if it's stored in the body, then that means it needs to be felt. And the thing is, you can't feel an emotion in your head. Like you have to actually feel it in your body. Emotions are energy in motion and they need movement to be processed. So if we're like got all this emotional stuff that's happened, this trauma, we're just talking about it, well, it's still stuck in our body. And that's why that fascia system is still tense and wound up and your nervous system's still in fight or flight because you haven't addressed the body at a physical level. If that's what it's kind of craving, is that release from a physical level as well.
So someone's listening to think, okay, this I get that completely. I'm with you. But I don't have chronic pain. What could this manifest as? What are the most common things that you see that perhaps are even things we don't really notice? Because as you say, when it becomes chronic when it's a cycle, and often we
Mm,
disconnect from the pain because it's
too
always
painful.
present. So we get used to
Yeah,
it. We get used to this kind of heightened
yeah,
level of pain, which may
yeah,
tire us out, but again, we don't really tune into it. And then I guess
yeah.
it goes in that cycle. So what I'm trying to say is, how can we tune into that? What are the warning signs and manifestations that you just see often in people who are suffering from this?
Yeah, like you said, people just put up with it. These little niggles that it's like, oh, that's normal. We accept these low grade headaches that we have all the time, or like the lack of sleep. Taking a long time to get to sleep. I think a lot of people realize that they're always tired and always kind of sore, but they don't really you don't do think that it's necessary to do anything about it until the body is so sick of you not listening that it goes, "Ah, I'm gonna send you like a really big pain signal." And then it's like, "Okay, now I've got a bulging disc. Oh, now I've injured myself, but I don't know how. It's happened because I've sneezed." A lot of these like big structural issues can come from doing something like coughing, because we've ignored those like lower grade symptoms for so long that then the fascia is like, okay, okay, you're not listening. Bam, like, let me give you a signal that you're going to have to pay attention to.
I think a lot of people, I certainly know people who suddenly, nothing, they have this massive injury. And it's
Mm,
something, you think, oh, okay, I really want to avoid that. But it is these warning signals that our body's constantly in communication with us. As you say, our
mm,
body and our mind are two
mm.
separate entities, but they're always in communication with each other.
Yeah,
There's such
yeah,
a link. And if we
yeah,
either add some painkillers into that link to kind of break it up a bit, because that's effectively what we're doing. That's where it fits in. It fits in to kind of disconnect that link.
mm, mm,
It's
mm,
quite it's quite interesting because I think you need to be very aware of that. And there's a huge kind of sort of when we get older, we're not going to be able to do as much, and we're going to hurt more, and we're going to be stiff, and we're going to have all of these potential, what we would define as chronic pain
mm.
symptoms, and we're not going to be able to run as fast or as far or at all, or walk up a hill, or all of these weight bearing things. Is that true?
I heard this quote recently. I need to remember say it properly. You don't stop doing things because you get older. You get older because you stop doing things. And like you said, we all have this belief, subconscious belief that, well, we're going to get old, so this is normal. And I hear it all the time with my clients. Oh, it's just old age. Like my hip's bad. I'm probably going to need surgery, but that's what happens when you get old. It's like, "Oh, no, like, don't for one, don't have that mindset because the mind is powerful, like, you think that's your path, you've just created that before you physically manifest." But 2, if we give the body the attention it needs, we can really have so much more longevity and prolong that. Like, yes, time on this planet, the longer you've been on this under this gravitational pull, right? The Earth is we've got gravity and it's compressing us. That's why you get shorter as you age because literally, like gravity is compressing us, and that is true. But if we can do things to keep us decompressed, right? Like releasing our fascia, which is that connective web. Like if that's getting tight and compressed with time, then you want to do things that are going to decompress that so that we can actually have a bit more longevity. And these old things, these things that happen when we're old can actually not happen in our 60s, but maybe they start to happen in our 90s. We can prolong that kind of state of age.
So
Yeah.
what do you do to prevent that? What's your plan of action?
So to release fascia, it needs pressure and movement, and the movement is coming from the breath, right? So that movement, that oxygenation of the cells that we're after to decompress and release, right, and lengthen or create flow in the body, that is coming from our breath, breathing in that good stuff. And then that detoxification is really, really important. So again, then that's when your lymphatic system comes into it as well. Oh, another system. The body is so clever. It's got all these systems to self-heal. It's got all these things it wants to heal. It wants to get rid of the waste. Right? But if we just keep stuffing it with more chemicals or bad food or lack of movement, like most of us don't move enough, or we move too hard and we put our body under too much physical stress, and we think of exercise as this punishment and we're just creating more stress to the nervous system, so it's tensing up more. That's what I did for my 20s as a dancer, right? You, as an athlete, you're just punishing your body, and then when you stop, you're like, oh, I've got. That's why we were so much pain when you stop that sport. I've gone on a tangent, but anyway, what was your question? What I do to release it? Um, it needs movement, but it needs movement that is low impacts, right? So that your breath can fully oxygenate. And it needs that pressure. So, like when you get a massage, the therapist is putting that pressure to stimulate blood flow so that the body can, all the systems can have flow and it can start to heal. The lymphatic system can have that flow to drain all those toxins out. And if that system's stuck, then your body, as we get older, is just getting more toxic, more toxic, more toxic. And then things like cancer come, and we're like, oh, it's because I'm old. And it's like, no, it's because your system hasn't released those toxins or like done its job. And it's just now it's like disease is coming. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's so complex yet so obvious,
Yeah.
isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes.
Which is, I guess, the
Yeah.
infuriating thing.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
just love, like, talking about, okay, so we get older, and of course we have all this pain. It's like, no, it's breaking down these myths that are actually not even being told to us. They're just kind of part of what we
Mm,
expect, our
mm,
expectations. And again, what we tell ourselves in our mind will manifest itself. Like
yeah.
if we tell ourselves, you know, we are really X, whatever it
Mm.
is, then it's likely that we're either going to act in
We're
a certain way
produce.
to have that
Yeah.
behavior, or our body is going to manifest that because we're believing it.
Yeah.
And
What
it's
is your truth? It comes, yeah, it comes down to that subconscious belief, and we're all programmed to believe things at a subconscious level. Most of us don't even know what we actually believe, or those thoughts. And especially females, we think so many thoughts in a second. We're gonna be thinking so many thoughts, and it's like, do you actually know? Like, have you a really powerful tool is journaling? For me, it's been anyway because when you just put pen to paper on, like, and you start to try and process these thoughts that you're having all the time at a subconscious level, and you're in the state of overwhelm and you don't know why, start to jot down and you suddenly realize, oh my gosh, is that what I'm actually thinking? No wonder I'm feeling heavy or pissed off. And then if you're feeling anger and frustration, then that's their body's response to that is tension. So it's like, let's actually, you know, be aware of those subconscious beliefs, that little voice that's constantly running literally our lives. Are you even aware, or do you even know that voice? Yeah.
yeah. And a lot of top athletes will have sports psychologists, which will effectively re-engineer the inner workings of your brain,
Yeah.
for performance, for toughness, for longevity, for nerves is a massive part of it, performance nerves, pre-race nerves, whatever it is. And I think we'll tune out of that and say, well, do you know what? I'm not actually going to the Olympics, so I actually don't need to think about my mind because, I'm just
Yeah.
going to do this. But as you say, it is that little inner voice. And it's not
Yeah.
just for fitness. I think it's becoming a bit more prevalent
Yeah.
and how you present yourself, Don't have these negative thoughts or these negative words about yourself. How would you speak to other people, And I think that is very much more in the narrative. But it's
Mhm,
interesting how it can
mhm.
manifest itself. And I think another huge, huge, huge topic, which we haven't, I don't feel like we've really conquered. I think there's a lot of discussion about it, but stress. We all kind of
Mm,
understand what stress is and
mm,
some causes of it. Yet it's so present in our lives. And as you say,
mm,
there's so much overwhelm. And obviously, we can only speak for our present moment that we are living through, which is a world of internet, online, social media, also like work, career as it always has been. And then
yeah.
suddenly, women in their 20s and their 30s, they have all of these opportunities to do lots of things, or that more traditional role, which has always been there for women. And there's a lot
Mhm,
of different elements that are kind of in your brain, a lot of overwhelm. Plus, there's just general stress of,
mm.
you know, what to eat, when to eat, how to save money, where to go on holiday,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
family getting ill, people dying, who to
Yeah.
marry, whatever it is, like all of these
Yeah.
normal things. But how would you kind of break down stress? Someone comes to you and they say, I'm really stressed. And I think this is, causing a lot of my symptoms of pain. Or maybe you identify that in someone else. I think your problem is stress. Where do you
Mm.
even start by unpacking that? Because that's such a huge
Oh,
topic.
it is so hard. Again, a lot of the clients that I work with, they're so they come in with pain in their body and they think it's because they're getting old or they haven't looked after themselves at a physical level. And now it's like, okay, my body's given up on me. But it's and then I start to learn a little bit more about them and I'm like, oh, like, no, no, you have so much stress, so much expectation, so much pressure, and they fail to kind of connect that as to why their system is tight and in pain. How to address that is tough because the person has to be ready and willing to want to address that as well. You can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. And it comes to like they actually have to change some of their lifestyle, like their habits, some of their beliefs. Like you have to kind of look in the mirror and go, oh, okay. Again, like ask like, who am I? Like, am I being my authentic self or have I lived my life as for others? Or have I lived disconnected? Am I actually putting myself first? Do I have respect for myself, for my body, or have I just disrespected this body and temple? Because and all of it comes, and it sounds so cringe, but like self love, like we don't actually like know how to love ourselves. Love, what is love? Were we loved properly as a child? Were our needs met as a child from our parents? Like, were they able to give us the love we needed? Unfortunately, most of the time, no, and it's no one's fault. Like it's just, oh my gosh, I've gone so deep. But how to address stress? Back to your question, there's so many layers to it. And yes, we can make all these physical changes. We can change our diet, we can change our sleep, we can look at the physical things that we're doing. But I believe a lot of pain is coming from that internal, that soul level, that internal place that the person has to be ready for and aware of. And it's quite confronting, to look at that and be like, oh, actually, like I've held on to this resentment for years. A lot of chronic pain, tension in the nervous system, fight, flight, comes from the inability to surrender, to forgive, to let go. And again, this is what I love. Like we've been designed so amazingly. It comes back to breath. Because every exhale, it's this physical representation, this metaphor of surrender, like letting go. And if we do not breathe well, we're just like hyperventilating, like in the shallow state, right? We live our lives in this chronic hyperventilation. We're actually not tapping into that parasympathetic rest, digest. And that usually is a metaphor to like internally, like, do we have some bitterness? Do we have anger towards daddy issues, mommy issues? Like we all got them, right? It's like, has someone hurt us that we're still like about? Or have we hurt ourselves? Do we have regrets? Have we not forgiven ourselves? Um, that's that kind of stress at that soul level, that internal level. And people have to be willing to go there.
Mhm.
You can do all the right things physically, and then sometimes you're doing all that, and I was one of them, and you're still in pain. So then it's like, okay, like we gotta look in the mirror, we gotta look a little deeper now, because physically I'm doing all the right things, but my body's still telling me something's not right here. I'm not at peace, I'm not at rest. So
Yeah. It is addressing that inner side, which I think is so
mm,
painful, but as you said
mhm,
before, you just carry it around with you, either until the day you die or until the day you address
mm.
it.
And
And
that's why the day people die, a lot of old people, it's like all or even not even older people, midlife crisis. People go, these midlife crisis. What's that about? It's where the lid comes off, right? Deep depression in itself is literally a depression of emotion. It's because we've lived our lives for so long with this depression of our emotions that sooner or later the lid comes off, and then we have these crisis moments in our life, all these chronic inflammation. The body will go into chronic inflammation, and there's all these labels and fancy words now for polymyalgia, like all these diseases that come from just chronic inflammation out of nowhere, arthritis out of nowhere. And it's like, oh, what's that about? Yes, it might be from all the bad McDonald's foods you were eating as well, but it's like the lid comes off, and people then on when they're on their deathbed, all this stuff comes out and they want to reconcile with their loved ones. All this trauma that they haven't addressed like comes out, and it's like the body can finally let it go, and then you die, and it's oh shame like to let it wait that long, you know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when push comes to shove, we wanna
Mm,
solve it, but I don't know,
mm.
it could be
But it's
fear, it could
messy.
be we're not even
Mm,
aware of it, or we're just not
mm,
taking the time to kinda connect and dive in. When you say that the
mm.
lid comes off, do you mean that there's just, like, a huge accumulation of things that they just
Yeah.
can't even fit in to our mind and body
Yeah, and
any
it
longer?
usually yeah, it usually just takes one little incident where that's stressful or that's hurt you or pissed you off, and then it's like that's like the last straw, you know? It's like, "Oh, man, like, this has happened to me again." It's like this unmet expectation or this disappointment, and then the lid comes off, and then it's like all this stuff is, like, coming out, and you're like people have mental breakdowns, you know? So, yeah.
And where does anxiety kind of lead into this? Obviously, like the depression side of it. I think that's such an
Mm,
interesting way to describe it, to break it down, because
mm,
it's such a delicate topic,
mm,
depression and anxiety, that I think
mm.
often we're scared to actually learn about it because
Yeah.
it's so delicate, because people who suffer from it, it's so sensitive and destructive and really, really hard and horrible. Therefore, it can be almost scary to actually try and think, hold on, where is this coming from? Because you're almost
Mm,
belittling people who suffer from it in a way, in
yeah,
absolutely no intentional way. But I
yeah.
think it's so important to actually learn, hold on, because if we believe our bodies are reacting to whatever is happening with our brain
Mm.
and our body and that
Internally,
emotion
yeah.
between it, then surely it's all linked together in that term and it's a manifestation of something else.
Yeah. 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 Again, I have family members who suffer, and anxiety, again, it comes back to that lack of surrender, I believe, and wanting to control. It is tough, that inability to surrender the situation, those external forces. So our body starts sending this, the heart rate starts going, the breath gets short, and it becomes this uncontrollable thing we cannot control. These panic attacks that come out. It is something that gets belittled, and you kind of think, well, just think about, like, just stop it, like, just think about it differently. Like, why are you overreacting to that situation? Lack of trust, right? If we've had things in our life that's caused lack of trust, huge disappointments, huge unmet expectations, then that lack of trust causes that heightened state and that fight or flight. So then any little situation can happen, or any little thought that we stew on for too long can cause this physical response. Yeah, it's invisible as well. Depression and anxiety is super can be invisible, and we just kind of live with these conditions and accept them and just go, oh yeah, I just have it. It's my anxiety. We use words like my depression, my anxiety. We like attach our identity to it. And it's like, oh, let's try and learn how to like trust and surrender, and like the body, like use the body to let go of that state.
We talk about the physical health and we talk about the mental health, and that is all
Mm,
chronic pain in itself. So our
mm,
body
yeah,
manifests itself in these different ways. And
yeah,
it's really interesting and refreshing, I think, to talk about it quite candidly and how it
yeah.
links in with the body and how we can identify that. And another thing
Mm.
that you've kind of mentioned on your social media is the jaw tension side of things. And also,
Oh yeah.
like, even with your eyes, like not blinking, if you look at your phone,
Yeah.
I often had dry eyes, and that is probably
Oh yeah.
because I will look at the
Screen.
screen too much. And,
Yeah.
if I go to the opticians, they're like, "You've got dry eyes." I'm like, "I know." But, and it's
Mm.
not something that's terrible or that I suffer from or I need it to do anything about. But it's interesting how
Not
you don't
yet,
realize,
Emily.
well, that's true actually.
Don't wait till you get older, and then it's a problem, and then you're like, "Oh, it's just age. I need glasses now." It's
Very
like
true.
these little signs, I'm sorry, I'm catching you out, but it's like you have dry eyes. You know that. Okay, well, let's do something about that dry. Let's stimulate. Let's put some pressure to stimulate that blood flow and hydration to the cell, so that your eyes are not dry. Or let's make sure we have, a blue light protector if you're on your screen all the time. There's glasses that you can get
They
to.
work. Do you think they work?
Yeah, well, I think it's controversial, right? But I know for me, if I'm on my screen, I actually, I should right now, I should put my glasses on, and they have a little tint, because too long of this sort of lighting and stimulation, I'm going to get a headache. Like, so yeah, for me, they do work. Having that kind of tint definitely takes that edge off. Yeah.
Because I used to have blue light glasses, And then people would make fun of me in a jokey way, like, "Oh, it's just a placebo effect, and, you just wanna put your glasses on." I'm like, "Well, fine." But I do think that they would
If it
work.
works,
I
it
mean, it
works.
just isn't it? Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole even different side of the placebo effect and how that
Yes, let's not go there. That's a whole nother topic.
shelf
Yeah, we'll shelve that one.
yeah, no one people who are listening, we know that exists. We're not
Yeah.
gonna delve into that right now.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah.
But what about jaw tension? Where does that kind of come from, and how can we even know why do we have that? Is that a manifestation of stress, did you say?
Yes. Yes. I was told I didn't even realize that I had so much subconscious jaw tension. But then I did know growing up, I was told by my dentist that I grit my teeth when I sleep. And then he kind of said that, and then I was like, "Oh, what can I do about it?" Like, "Oh, you can have these plates or whatever, or just try and like relax your jaw." And it's like, well, it's very hard to do if you're doing that at nighttime when you're asleep. And like, you just kind of you hear that, and then it's like, oh, whatever. And then as I was doing this breathing course and this breathing work, Buteyko breathing, it's look it up, it's brilliant. And it's about orienting yourself to become aware of yourself through your breath. And I realized like, oh my gosh, I am driving my car and I'm clenching. And you suddenly become really self-aware, all those moments where you're having this subconscious tension. And I was told, and it's so for me, it's so true. It's this just subconscious stress. Again, the nervous system talks to the fascial system. And if there's stress, there's tension. If there's frustration, there's tension, like all those emotions that produce tension, it's going to be, the jaw is whatever, for whatever reason, this lovely muscle that just likes to grip, right? And that's connected to like your spine and your like so it's very unfortunate if you have chronic jaw tension, and most of us do because it is so subconscious, and that's when you need to look at the stress side of probably that and more of that internal side of how to relieve it rather than just like, like and my social media is full of like these releases physically to do and they work. Don't get me wrong. But if you're not going to address the deeper issue or the root of the cause of why your jaw is locked, and that tension will just come back eventually, you know?
And moving on to the next topic, headaches. So similarly,
Mm,
talk to me
mhm.
about headaches. Why do we, if you have a headache, if it's a tension headache, or where does that come from, and what should we maybe do about it? When does it become an issue that we should maybe look at more closely?
Oh, I mean, so many causes to headaches. You've got your screen, you've got your posture, like that can pressure on the cervical spine. There's lack of blood flow that's going to now become,
Is
sore in
it
your
lack
head.
of blood flow? Is that what causes headaches a lot of the time, or is it just variety? And
I'm
is
not
that
sure. To me, that kind of makes sense. Maybe, yeah, but I wouldn't say that. Yes, I'm not sure clinically. Lack of blood flow, tension, lack of blood flow. Yeah,
anyway?
fascia. What I know about fascia, it's that lack of blood flow. That's why it gets tight. So maybe that's quite profound, Emily. Wow. Well, that's awesome. But, if you're not getting enough sleep, like 2 nights ago, I did not sleep well, and I usually sleep pretty well, but also it's the quality of your sleep as well. Sleep is huge. I had this low-grade headache all day, and I'm like, "Oh, some people sleep is so poor, and that's so normal to them to not sleep well, and they just have live with these headaches." So lack of sleep issues, lack of hydration, like those physical things. Water, like, so, so important. The sort of foods you're eating. If I eat too much sugar, I get a headache now. Like, my body lets me know, like, that is not okay. It's like a sugar headache. What else? Again, yeah, those postural issues. If you're hunching over your laptop all day, like, you're literally compressing your rib cage, which is rounding your shoulders, which is putting your neck out, and it's like all this pressure is coming forward into your head. Then you've got the lights, like your vestibular system, which is, your actually I actually shouldn't have even used that word because I don't know how to define it properly, but I know what it means. But it's that sensitivity to light, right, and sound. If that is chronic, always being overstimulated, like that's gonna give you a headache. When to do something about it? Man, if I had a headache every day, I would be looking at sleep and hydration first. Posture is huge, and be wanting to make those changes. Overthinking as well, like sometimes. I mean, I was awake all night because I was overthinking. So it's like, if you cannot learn to have that mental switch off, like, can you actually sit with yourself in silence without your phone, without a music playing, or can you actually fall asleep without any stimulation? I didn't used to be able to. I used to have to fall asleep to sound or to watching something. That's so bad. It's such a terrible habit that so many people have this habit of like not being able to actually just have silence and no stimulation. It's like scary. You know, have you ever been in those float tanks? They're so awesome. But some people hate it because it's so confronting to be in this tank of water, pitch black, no sound.
That sounds awful. See? It
That
just
is my
me.
but it's like it's removing all of that external stimulus to like regulate your body, regulate your nervous system. And we're scared of that. That's like scary because we have all these things that we can distract ourselves with. And like, you know, it's scary to sit with your own thoughts sometimes for some stuff that hasn't been processed. You know, that stuff comes to the surface. It's like, oh, that's too painful. I don't want to be present for that. Let's just watch a show or listen to a podcast.
So where we live in the UK, we had a storm last weekend, and it was a really, really bad storm. And we had a red weather warning where we were, which is obviously like very
wow.
severe danger to life. And we lost power in our house, and we lost power, and it didn't come on for 5 days, which was quite a long time.
It is.
And where
Yeah.
we live, we kind of live out in the countryside, and there's not very good mobile signal. So when you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't really have any signal. Which is kind of fun initially because you're like, "Oh, yeah, do you know, this
Yeah.
is fine. I'm lighting my candles and it's really lovely." And
For maybe
then
one day.
you get pretty bored, like, pretty quick.
Yes.
You know, you can read some books by candlelight, and then suddenly it's like 7 p.m. still, and you're like, "I have, like, a good, like, few hours. Even if I go to bed at, like, 8:30, that's another hour and a half, and that's pretty early." You know? And you think, "Wow, like, there's there's a lot that we distract ourselves with, and I don't think you
Yeah.
realize that until you kinda take that away completely. And it's
Yes.
something that I'm really fascinated by is our mind and how, when people go to sleep, they have so much to
Mm,
process because they've not really
mm,
stopped all day. And some people have really, really
mm,
busy lives. I like to spend quite a lot of time
mm.
processing things. So in fact, when I try and go to sleep, I actually go to sleep quite quickly, which I'm very
Yes.
grateful for. But I
Yes.
think it's quite an intentional thing as well. Like when I'm in the car, I rarely will put something on. Maybe I'll put the radio on
Mm,
a little bit, but I also like to process things. And I don't
same.
necessarily go into like, why am I feeling this? And it's not necessarily that deep, but it's just letting your thoughts go. And I'm quite a creative person, which I'm aware of.
Mm.
So if I don't have any time to think about anything, I will not be creative at all. Like it's definitely a
Yes.
switch that you need to tune
Yes.
into. And some
Yes.
people will say, oh, I'm more creative. And some people will say, oh, I'm more like analytical. And whatever it is, our brains are very different. We work in very different ways. But you need to tune into it. No matter what type of person
Mm,
you are, you need to choose to be that.
mm,
You need to let your
mm.
brain do that because we can be in denial, we can be distracted. And I think that leads to so much overwhelm. And as you say, in the midlife crisis example, you add more and more on, and suddenly, poof, you pop open,
Mm,
and
mm.
metaphorically, you pop open, and there's all
Yeah.
of this stuff that you've got to deal with.
That
And I
comes to
think
the
that comes
surface.
down to so many different things. And then perhaps even like going deeper, that sort of where's the control of our life? Who are we? Are
Mm,
we tuning into
mm,
ourselves? What's our thoughts actually saying? Are we doing this for
mm,
someone else? Like,
mm,
and then it links into that midlife crisis.
mm,
And obviously
mhm,
there's so many different elements that will lead into it. And in no way do I, you know,
mm,
intend to simplify it. But I
mm.
think even like that surface level thought, it's taken me like I've had to step back and think about it, and while you were talking, and then I'm like, hold on, that is it. But you had to engage. And we have
You have
so
to
much,
choose to.
yeah, we have so many things that we can kind of work out and engage in our brain. And I found that when I spend a lot of time, say, on social media, a lot of research I do for guests will be on social media. So I do spend a bit of time on it, but I've got to be super careful that I'm
Yeah.
not just mindlessly scrolling because
Yeah.
then there's only so much you can actually consume. And
Yeah.
then I remember there was something the other week and I couldn't even like do this little equation in my head that was like really easy. And I was like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
I'm not stupid. Like I went to
Yeah.
university. I know how to do simple maths
Yeah.
equations, but I don't know that because my brain is filled with
It's
social
too
media.
full.
It is
Yeah.
full.
Yeah.
And that just
Yeah.
shocked me because I'm like, wow, if I hadn't tuned into that, I could have gone another week and not
Yes.
actually like deleted Instagram off my phone or whatever. and just had that time out. And it doesn't need to be forever. It can
Yeah.
be 24 hours.
During COVID, I turned my phone off for 3 days. Best thing. I highly recommend if you can do it, just turn it off for a few hours. I mean, 3 days is a bit much, but there's nothing else going on. But, I felt like I had just had a month holiday, and the creativity, that's how my online business was birthed during that time, because I had space to be creative. I wasn't filling my head with, I mean, these things, like, it's all about social connection and to connect, but actually it's disconnecting us from ourselves. That's what it's doing when you have no discipline around it. I mean, it's a great tool as well, but like you said, there needs to be those boundaries. Otherwise, it's just relentless, and we kind of start to lose ourselves, and we don't get that time to process and to be creative. And then we start to feel, sad, or we're comparing ourselves, or we're not sleeping, because then at nighttime our brain is suddenly able to start thinking about all the stuff we haven't given time to think about during our day. So yeah, turn your phones off, guys. That's that's my advice. Just turn it off for, like, even if it's an hour, turn it off or put it on flight mode. I do that. I try to do that once a week now. For, they call it a Sabbath. Like, literally on a Sunday, I will do my best to not touch my phone, because I need that time. Otherwise, my life, we all live such busy lives, and if you're not able to give that body the rest, you know, that it needs, the brain the rest that it needs, and how can you expect to keep running at this pace? Like, eventually, your system, your body's gonna go, "No, stop," and it's gonna force you to stop. Yeah.
I heard a quote and it was, "Are you going to be consuming or producing?" And when we're on our phones, often
Mm,
we're just consuming. And it's very
mm,
traumatic that,
mm.
scrolling on social media is not bad. We all do it. We're not saying
Yeah.
that you're high and mighty if you don't do it.
No, no.
It is, you're constantly consuming things. And I
Yeah.
think that when you have that feeling of you're doing the thing that your brain does best, you're being, for me, like if I feeling like I'm being creative or I'm like really like structuring this in a certain way or whatever it might be, I feel really fulfilled. I feel actualized. I'm like, yes, okay,
Mm,
I'm good at this. Like, it's quite
mm,
rare in life to feel like,
mm,
hold on, I'm good at this. Like I've
mm,
got this,
mm.
And often with that overwhelm, it can be really exasperated. So when you find that little glimmer of, hold on, I can actually do this, and I think I actually am doing an okay job at it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very actualizing, and often it just needs to be
yeah.
for ourselves. It's not exactly like
Yes,
jumping up on a stage and
yes.
saying I'm amazing at whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's for like purely for ourselves. And like Maslow's hierarchy of needs literally says self-actualization is at the top of it. Like,
Yep.
that is the point when you've kind of got it all. You've got that
Mm.
self-fulfillment and
Yep,
you
fulfillment,
have that.
purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Your basic needs are met as the triangle goes up, and it's really cool. I think that's really, I love Maslow.
Mm,
Um, good
mm.
guy. Anyway, and then yeah, I just think often we just run through life consuming things, but actually, like, what do we enjoy to do? Like, what do we enjoy doing? What do
Yeah,
we feel good at? And
yeah,
it is
yeah.
just those simple things that often we actually
We
enjoy. Those are the lasting
neglect. Yeah.
memories. Those are the ones that we kind of tune into. And then that's when our body will then relax and we can actually have
Yeah.
time tune into the tension that we're holding.
Mm,
Because it's very much that word hold. We're holding
mm,
it. All of those feelings or emotions that make us tense up.
mm,
Kind of need to address them. So it's super interesting how you
mm.
describe that. And I did allude to the mouse taping, which we never actually addressed. So if anyone's on tender hooks 30 minutes ago and thinking,
Sorry,
what
guys.
about this mouse tape? Get them out of their misery and let's explain it.
Oh, look, I think it's brilliant, because when you sleep, if you can, breathe through your nose, then, like you said, you wanna train it. And, when you're sleeping, you're not conscious, right, if you're breathing through your mouth or your nose, so taping is a brilliant way to make sure that you are only breathing through your nose. Um, for some people, they cannot breathe through their nose, so trying to tape their mouth shut at night is just not gonna work. It's not gonna work yet. So you wanna do, these little exercises. There's lots of exercises you can do to just try and train that nasal breath, or again, putting that pressure through the sinuses if it's a sinus issue. If it's structural, it's a little bit different, a little bit trickier, but you want to practice nasal breathing before you go tape your mouth shut at night and like force it to do it, because that's not going to work. But definitely nasal breathing, it is, you're getting more oxygen to your brain, you're getting more connection to your diaphragm when you breathe through your nose. Like, you can literally try it right now. Breathe through your mouth for a few breaths, and then if you can, close your nose close your mouth and breathe through your nose, you can feel a deeper connection to your body when you breathe through your nose. Yeah.
Yeah, there we
Mm.
go. Something to try. Something to try. It's a reoccurring theme that people mention breath work. So maybe it's something
Yeah,
that
I know. So we should pay attention.
everyone who's listening actually needs to do. So we don't want to be having the same
Oh,
conversation in a year and I'm like, oh yeah,
far
breath
out.
work. No, we need to be doing it.
It
Um,
took me 8 years. So when I first went into a Pilates session, and I was paying big money for my private Pilates sessions because I was learning to be a Pilates teacher, and I was telling her about my pain points, right? Because I had this condition, and she literally for the whole class made me lie on my back with like a ball into like different parts of my body and breathe. And I was so pissed off. I was like, I'm not paying you money to tell me how to breathe. I know how to breathe. Took me 8 years to realize I do not know how to breathe properly. No wonder I'm always in pain. So
oh, amazing. Amazing. And if you're thinking, okay, I want someone to take one thing away from this conversation as a
oof.
conclusion, what would be your breaking news? What should they have in their brain as they kind of go on from their day, no matter what they're doing after listening to it?
Oh, I think I mean, it's which treasure to pick. Um, Pain is not just physical. I think that's a real misconception. And pain doesn't necessarily mean that there has to be damage. All right, physical damage to the body. Yeah, pain is quite often not just physical. It's the physical manifestation is happening because of the internal issue has not been addressed. If that
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And if people want to follow you online, Raffaella, and see what you do, work with you, where should they go?
I have an account, Rafa Movement. So that's my Instagram handle, and then rafamovement.com is my website. I have a few exciting things launching soon, but Rafa is an acronym and it stands for release, align, flow, and activate. And all of those words I chose as a metaphor for what to do physically for your body and what your body needs. From it release to relieve pain and literally release from the breath, release from emotions, aligning those misalignments from a structural point, postural point, and then those misalignments at soul level. Flow, the body needs flow and space to come into freedom. And then obviously activation, it's like physically building strength. Yes, we need that activation once all those other things have happened, but then like activation as a metaphor as well into like doing something practical with the knowledge that you've received, like activating that. So Rafa, that's what that stands for, and that's where you can find me. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I will link those below so people can check those out. And thank you so much for joining. I have a lot to think about, and I'm
I
sure that
know.
people are tuning in do. I love
We had a
conversations
big
like this.
conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me, I feel like we went on a few different tangents there, but we could talk for hours about this topic. But thank you for having me. Really appreciated it.